Shalom Bechukosai, Shabbos Chazak. Would you believe we finished another Seder? Next week's already, we're going to be in Seder Bamidbar. And here we are, the end of Vayikra. And in this week's Parsha, Chazal tell us about the words at the beginning of the Parsha, Im Bechukosai Telechu. If you will go, if you will walk in my laws, in my chukim. So Chazal tell us that the Torah, when the Torah says here, if Im Bechukosai Telechu, and then promises us all those rewards, we are not speaking about Kiyum HaMitzvahs. We're not speaking about being Mekayim mitzvahs and getting rewarded. What Rashi tells us, what the Torah is speaking about, Rashi says, Shetiyu amelim v'Torah. That also very apropos, right before Shavuos. We're about a week before the Yontiv of Shavuos now. And what brings us the rewards when we say, Im Bechukosai Telechu, we're saying, Shetiyu amelim v'Torah, that you should be learning Torah. This is really along the lines of the Klei Yakar. The Klei Yakar also says that the Torah says here, Im Bechukosai Telechu, you'll be rewarded. The Klei Yakar asks, we don't see anywhere in the Torah that the Torah tells you that you should go in the chukim. So how would you know how to receive such a reward? Again, they all answer the same questions, that it's telling us that a person should go in the derech HaTorah. It's not talking about being mekayim the actual mitzvahs. It's talking about going in the derech HaTorah. Nesivos Shalom says that every person has to know that there are really two chalakim, two separate parts of the Torah. There are the mitzvahs of the Torah that we are explicitly commanded to do, commanded to follow the mitzvahs. That's one part of the Torah. And then there's another part of the Torah that the Nesivos Shalom calls it the Ruach HaDvarim. And we would, in our American society, we would call it the spirit of the law. The Ruach HaDvarim. And what's a Ruach HaDvarim? From the Torah, a Jew sees from the Torah, and you feel what to do and what not to do. Even if it's not explicitly written in the Torah, it's not spelled out in words, it's not listed there, but a Jew knows from learning Torah, you know what you are supposed to be doing and what you're not supposed to be doing. We feel from the Torah just how someone should behave. And that is really what our pasuk means, Im Bechukosai Telechu. And when we say that we're not talking about the Kiyum HaMitzvahs, what we're talking about is that what the Torah is saying here, Im Bechukosai Telechu, we want to know that you are going in the derech HaTorah. And that's really the lashon also of Telechu. Telechu means it's instruction. Halichos olam, the way of the world. We want to know that a Yid is, from the Torah, what you're getting is how to go in the derech HaTorah. And the way of the world, when we follow the way of the world and we live our lives in the world by the ways of the Torah. The Gashmias, not just the Ruchnias, the Gashmias that we do, and the Gashmias that we have to live with every day should be in the way of the Torah. That everything that we do, we are doing for Hashem. We're doing it l'shem shamayim. You could do the same action in two ways. You do the action just blindly going about your day, doing things, and then there's actually a way of getting schar for everything that you do. Whether it's your job, whether it's what you produce, whether it's what you're doing, whatever you're doing, if you do it l'shem shamayim, then you are getting schar for that. That is Im Bechukosai Telechu. And Rashi is telling us how to go about that. You know what Rashi tells us? How does a Jew do things according to the will of Hashem? That is, Rashi's telling us the instruction book on how to do it. There's only one way to do it. Shetiyu amelim b'Torah. That if you learn the Torah, you know what Hashem wants? That you should live the life of Kiddush Hashem, that you should live the life of L'Shem Shamayim, you should live the life of living in the Derech HaTorah. There's only one way to do it, and that is by opening up the Sefer and learning Torah. Shetiyu amelim b'Torah. Don't fool yourself to think that you're going to listen to this philosophy or someone's going to explain you how you're supposed to act in this way. The playbook, the encyclopedia, the thing that teaches you how to live the life of a Jew in every way, Rashi is telling us, in Bechukosai telechu, you want to know how you're supposed to do it, shetiyu amelim b'Torah. The Ratzon of Hashem is that you should learn Torah. And that is how you train yourself to go in the Derech HaTorah. And the Torah tells us that if you go the Derech HaTorah, then you get the rewards of an osati gishmeichem b'itam. People are always constantly running around looking for segulos, for parnasa, and of course, segulos may be a wonderful thing, but we don't realize the biggest segula for parnasa is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells you is going to bring you your parnasa. Bechukosai telechu, shetiyu amelim b'Torah. The Torah promises you, the Torah gives you a bracha, v'nosati gishmeichem b'itam, which is the biggest bracha of parnasa. So Nesivos Shalom asks on this, and he says, we see all these brachas that are promised us, beginning of the parsha, wonderful, wonderful brachas. You look through it, and you'll understand why you want to receive all these brachas. So, do we not say, the Nesivos Shalom asks, it's asked by other Mefarshim also, do we not say that schar mitzvah b'hai al maleka? So what's going on here? The Torah tells me, if I'm going to follow, I'm going to walk in the chukim, then I'm getting all these rewards. What happened to schar mitzvah? That nothing in this world, schar mitzvah al maleka doesn't just mean that you don't get schar in this world and you get it in the next world. It means that there is nothing in this world, the currency doesn't fit. There's nothing in this world that you could pay a person doing a mitzvah or learning Torah. You cannot get a reward with something in this world. And really, we know from the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos also that every person is supposed to be mekayim the Torah, the mitzvahs of the Torah, shelo yalmenas l'kabel pras. So why is the Torah telling you, you do the mitzvahs, b'chukosai telechu, and you're going to get the rewards? Nesivos Shalom says a beautiful answer, and he begins with a medrash. The medrash says, in Vayikra Rabbah, that we all have to know that the world was set up with certain laws. There are laws of nature, and we all could observe daily, as the pasuk in Tehillim says, we say it every morning in davening, Vayamidem la'ad la'olam chok nosan v'lo yavor. That Hashem set the world in motion with certain laws. Laws that really cannot be changed. And what are they? You look around, walk outside, the sky, the earth, the sun, the moon, the sea, the shore, all those things are rules of nature, laws of nature that Hashem set in at Brias Ha'olam. And we have to know that there's a Seder Kavua that Hashem said that these things should never change. And as we all know, any slight slip-up or variation in that Seder brings terrible destruction to the world. Anything that changes, if the sun got a little further, a little closer, if the seashore is not holding back the water, anything that changes in the laws of nature that HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up, tremendous destruction comes to the world. And says the Nesivos Shalom that all this is contingent on, we know, the laws of nature. And the root of all those laws are the chukim of the Torah. What keeps the laws of nature safe, what keeps them good, the basis and the foundation of that are the chukim of the Torah. In other words, Hashem set up the Bria that the laws of nature are tolui in Klal Yisrael keeping the Torah. That we, by learning Torah, by keeping the Torah, we keep it all going and we keep everything in order. So listen to this beautiful way of learning the beginning of the parsha. So the Torah tells us, Im Bechukosai telechu, and as we said, it looks like there's a reward of an osati gishmechem b'itom. The rain, the parnasa, will come in its right time. Says the Nesivos Shalom, it's not a reward. We asked the question that mitzvah b'hayal maleka, we don't get rewarded in this world. We don't get a reward for mitzvahs. You know what it is? That if we keep the Torah, then midah keneged midah, Hashem keeps the laws of the Bria. If we keep the laws of the Torah, it's midah keneged midah, Hashem keeps the laws of the creation. And then Hashem gives us parnasa and more. But that's only im bechukosai telechu. If we actually go, if we learn Torah, if we go in the derech HaTorah, and the Torah has an influence on us, and we live in the ways of the Torah, and chas v'shalom, if we don't keep the Torah, then we are the ones who chas v'shalom cause destruction and interruption of the laws of nature and bracha. Many times, and the Nesivos Shalom brings this down, and he says, we see that there could be a flood, a tsunami, a flooding of the shore where the waters come over. We see earthquakes, and in one moment, thousands and thousands of people are wiped off the face of the earth. What's going on here? Okay, so we all try to explain it with laws of nature and this and that. And the Nesivos Shalom says that what we have to understand that it's our not keeping the laws of the Torah that changes. If we don't keep the chukim, im bechukosai, if we don't go with the chukim of the Torah, then we're not doing the foundation of the nature of the world. So the Rebbeinu Shalom Kaviyachol, so to speak, lets up on the nature of the things that keep the world going, and we see what happens: terrible destruction, water, floods could flood out thousands of people, earthquakes, things happen suddenly. But we have to understand one thing: that it's not a schar v'oinish. It's not a reward or a punishment. It's the nature of the world. It's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu set up the world, that the beginning and end of everything is learning Torah. Learning Torah and keeping the Torah and making the Torah part of us and living the ways of the Torah. If we don't do it, then we have disrupted nature. We disrupt nature, then the laws of nature of Hashem sending parnasa b'shefa, Hashem sending us all the brachos that keep us going, we disrupted it. We disrupted those. So every person has to know that we hold the keys to the success in the world. Klal Yisrael, when something happens in the Ukraine, when something happens in another part of the world, we have to understand that really it all begins and ends with us. It begins and ends with us learning the Torah and keeping the Torah. Now when we come a week before Shavuos, we have to understand that Torah is not just an intellectual thing, not just a geschmacka thing to learn, not just the interesting thing to take apart every day, a daf to learn. Intellectually, it's very, very stimulating. But we need to understand that we are living and breathing, keeping this world going. We have the keys to the nature of the world. Im bechukosai telechu. If we go and we allow and we have the foundation of nature, then it's not a reward in this world. It's exactly midah keneged midah what we're doing. Let's all keep that in mind, how important it is that we keep the world going, how important Torah learning is, how important it is really to make sure that we live in the ways of the Torah and we create Kiddush Hashem, everything, l'shem shamayim, in whatever we do.